Chicos, muchas gracias por acompañarnos el día de hoy. Conseguimos esta invitada increíblemente especial y espero que les guste mucho su plática. Realmente es una persona muy interesante. Les voy a leer un poco sobre su carrera para que la conozcan un poco mejor. Phnam es una diseñadora industrial, arquitecta espacial y futurista, cofundadora del estudio de diseño Nonfiction, una firma creativa que convierte la ciencia ficción en realidad para un futuro mejor. Los diseños de Phnam abarcan muchas industrias, incluidos wearables, audio, neurotech, biohacking, salud, educación, transporte, robótica y aeroespacial. Se especializa en convertir tecnologías innovadoras en productos asequibles, intuitivos y estéticos que ayudan a los humanos a convertirse en las mejores versiones de sí mismos. Ella participa a nivel internacional discutiendo y promoviendo acerca del diseño para un futuro mejor, cubriendo historias de sostenibilidad, impacto social, florecimiento humano, exploración espacial. Con su esposo y cofundador, presenta Future, una serie de videos que desmitifica el diseño y el futuro de todo. Más adelante les estaremos compartiendo su canal de YouTube, realmente son muy buenos, deberían visitarlo. Y con esta pequeña introducción, pasamos al inglés. Toda la plática va a ser en inglés, y si tienen algún problema, si quieren que más adelante, cuando pasemos a la hora de preguntas, si tienen problemas para el inglés, lo pueden escribir y nosotros lo traducimos sin ningún problema. Entonces, pues, muchas gracias, chicos. And thank you, Phnam, for having the time to talk with us and share your experience. It's an honor for us.
Well, thank you for having me here. It's funny, I've never heard an introduction of myself in Spanish, and I actually understood every word, so that's cool. Maybe one day I'll give a presentation in Spanish, who knows? I do most of my presentations in English, and once in a while I'll do them in French, which is my first language. So yeah, it's pretty fun. So thank you for inviting me to speak to your organization and to the students. I'm always excited to speak to the future of industrial design or design in general, because I think we live in a very exciting time where a lot of technologies development is happening, and there needs to be more alignment with school education and the future of work. And the future of design is very much part of the future of work, because the work that we do influences so many industries. And I want to make sure that everybody here understands by the end of this presentation that you have the power to do that. There's a lot of work that needs to be done in terms of hard skills and soft skills and connections for you to get there. But this is where we start, right? So let me share my screen. All right, you guys let me know if you can see a big X on the right side.
Yes, we can. Perfect.
Okay, wonderful. So today we're going to talk about designing today for the future. So as Carrie mentioned in the introduction, a lot of the work that we do at my company, Nonfiction, is looking to the future. And in order to do that, we think about and study the technologies of today and the technologies of yesterday, in order to really, have a good grasp on the realities of tomorrow. One thing that's very exciting is that technology goes a lot faster than people think, because there's a lot of competition out there, the private sector versus the government, versus, things like COVID happening in the last year and a half, which has pushed a lot of us to innovate faster. And that's super fun. All right. So let's start where I started, right? I actually went to 4 different schools. The only reason why I went to 4 different schools because I never had to pay for it. Otherwise, there's no way in hell I would have done that. So I grew up in France. I was born and raised there and left when I was 23. So I went to college at a place called Strat. So Strat is a school that back in the day was well known for car design. So all of my friends I went to school with are car designers at Toyota and Mercedes, at Hyundai or whatever, like they're all over the world. I, however, never got any interest in car design. I love cars and I love driving them and I love looking at them, but I didn't have that passion. My passion was still in transportation. It was more focused on aerospace, so designing spacecraft and things of the sort. I had another passion back in the day. It was luxury design as well as packaging. So I specialized in space, luxury design, and packaging at Strat, and graduated. I guess I graduated first in class, 2005. And then since then, I've done more schooling and have worked in the industry. I did an exchange program at Design School in Kolding, which is in Western Denmark. So Denmark, as you know, is a Scandinavian country, well known for a lot of like very aesthetically interesting proportions and colors, and kind of like a sense of calm and risk-taking in their design. I happen to be living in the town where Lego is from, the Lego bricks. That's one of the biggest brands from Denmark. And it was very interesting to go to school there and learn from the community there how they see design. And then in 2005, I moved to the United States to pursue my master's in aerospace architecture. So for the ones who don't know, aerospace architecture is the practice of designing spacecraft and space habitats. So I get to design for microgravity environments or partial gravity for the moon or Mars on the surface or underground. So there are a lot of implications with systems engineering that you need to be aware of when you design for space. So that is one thing that I specialize in. So that I did that at the University of Houston at the Sasakawa International Center for Space Architecture. Just to give you an idea about how small that field is, this is the only master's degree was the only master's degree in the world in space architecture. And when I graduated, we were 4 people. And then lastly, a few years ago, 2014, I put myself through a little bit more training. I went to a leather crafting school. So I learned to create patterns, cut them, sew everything by hand, and create handbags and things of the sort. So as much as I love technology, I also love the technologies of the past, really understanding what makes a product well made. And my job a lot is about merging those two worlds together. How do we create a future that is well made, but also integrates technology that makes our lives easier? Next is a few jobs that I had before I started my company at Nonfiction. So you can see a lot of my experience has to do with consultancies. Except for Lancel and CCA. So Lancel is a handbag company in Paris. And so I was a designer there in my very, very early days. Everybody else is a design consultancy. And a design consultancy is basically a place where you get to design a lot of different things. There's one day you might design a product for the kitchen, and the next day you might design, an interior of a car, or the next day you design a medical product. So really that switching from one project to another is something I've done for almost 20 years now. So I'm very much used to it. Not only was design in that environment interesting to me, I was also interested in the business aspect of it. How do you sell design to people who need it, or even to people who don't believe they need design? And that's why I started my company 5 years ago, right? So, Lunar is a company that's been around for like 35 years by now. They have been acquired by McKinsey & Company, the consulting firm. IDEO is a company I worked for a very short amount of time because there was a huge misalignment between what I wanted out of my career and what IDEO was offering. IDEO was very, very good in the 90s, 2000, has innovated a lot, invented a lot of very cool products back when competition didn't really exist. But now the bulk of the money actually comes from strategy work, which I have no interest in. I like to follow through with design. I like to take an idea, figure out how to make that idea real, and go all the way to mass manufacturing, right? And then inject some business acumen to it. Randliner, I was in New York. A2, I was in New York. Herbst product, Fjord, and Listed. All of these companies are based in the Bay Area. So the Bay Area is centered on San Francisco, as you know, kind of the center of high tech. All the craziest things happening with VR or healthcare technology and all that is happening here. We have access to pretty fantastic universities, University of California, Berkeley, UCSF, that have pretty cutting edge things having to do with the future of humans. And then finally, I was actually a professor at California College of the Arts for 4 years. I did what I could in terms of trying to teach the students the reality of the job. That's very, very important for me to be honest with young professionals about what the job actually is and what kind of power they can have. I got into a lot of trouble because I like to say what I think, and people don't like to hear what I think. So anyway, that's the reality of things. I think it's very important to stand your ground when you have a lot of conviction, whether it's for design or for the future of an industry. And I believe that the future of design is very promising, but it will greatly depend on how designers are educated. So let's jump into my company. So I started a company called Nonfiction. The reason why I called it Nonfiction is because I'm interested in turning science fiction into reality, right? Science fiction that stays science fiction is just something for the movies or for the books. I'm interested in taking that and turning it into something that can be mass manufactured, integrate into people's lives, and change industries. And we do this for a better future, right? If we design something and it's not moving the needle somewhere in the world in terms of the human condition or how we treat our planet, then I'm not interested. The type of work that we do, kind of varies depending on who we're working with. Some people might need strategy. So strategy is about what do we do based on the research that, we put out there, user research or technology research, working with scientists and figuring out how we can take their science, their white paper, and turning it into a technology that actually makes sense. We do industrial design. I'm going to assume that all of you know what that is. Branding. Branding is more than just a logo or color. Branding is really how a brand connects with their audience, whether the audience is the user, the people who live around the user, the people working at the company, or anybody else. Space architecture is the field I was talking to earlier, designing spacecraft. Engineering. So the type of engineering that we do covers mechanical engineering, which is the engineering of parts that come together or moving parts. We do electrical engineering and firmware engineering as well. So making sure that the components that we solder together actually make the product function. And then we do systems design as well. So systems design is like the design of very complex systems where multiple types of technologies and interactions come together, to benefit someone, whether that someone is a society, like transforming a city into a smart city, or children, for example. So I'm going to talk later about a project where we design an educational system for a country. So this is the Nonfiction team. So we're 10 people and we are from all over the world. So I'm French myself, living in the US for 15 years. My co-founder is my husband, Martis. Nadia and Kirill are from Russia. Mustafa is from Canada, but his background is Egyptian. Fee is from Texas and her background is Vietnamese. Joe is from Oregon. Francesco is from Italy. Sarah is from Georgia, and her family comes from Lebanon. Luke is from Japan and Korea. Adrienne is American from New York, but speaks absolutely perfect French. She's a film producer, and then Kat is American. So you can see there's a lot of different cultures that come into the way we think about things, and that directly transpires in the work that we do. I'm not interested in making a box that's satisfies the average user. I'm interested in creating stories that actually connect emotionally with people. So the type of companies we work with, you might recognize a couple of logos here, companies like Logitech and Philips in healthcare and technology. We work with, NASA and other aerospace companies. We work with gaming companies like Atari, healthcare companies like Cala or Transtech and all that. We work with a hospitality with the Ritz-Carlton, we work in fashion with Yeezy. So not only are we, covering a lot of different cultures and countries within our own team, but also our clients come from all over the world. So obviously, because we are in San Francisco, Silicon Valley is our #1 client, right? All the technology companies around here, we work with them. It's fantastic. But over the last few years, we started, exploring other continents and other ways of thinking about technology and other ways that people live. And how we can design for them. So, East Asia or different parts of Africa, back to Europe. Surprisingly, even though I'm from Europe, we don't work much with Europe. There's a little bit of a misalignment at this point about the way we think about the future and the way they're ready to invest in it. So one thing that's always important when you start a design firm is to figure out what sets you apart, right? There are plenty of very talented design firms out there in the Bay Area or outside all over the world. People with very interesting opinions and very, very beautiful portfolios. But really what makes us unique is something that we had to build from the ground up as a business, right? So #1, we only have experienced designers. Nobody in this company has has less than 6 years experience because, we need to work with people who are very comfortable working with engineers and with business people and figuring out things down to the last detail. That is something that you will get to, hopefully, throughout your career, but I haven't met any person who just graduated from school and was good at that, which is normal. Unconventional methodologies, right? A lot of people ask me, so what process do you go through to find your solution? I'm like, well, we create a process every time we have a project, because I'm not interested in doing the same thing again and again, right? The cookie cutter process of getting to a solution is absolutely not why I started the company. Behavior design for behavior change. So behavior change is when people have a behavior, whether it's a good or bad behavior, but we make it better, right? I am sick, I'm not sick anymore. Or I don't learn very well, and then we create a solution that helps you learn or memorize things a little bit better. So everything is about behavior change. I mean, think about the life that you had like 3-4 years ago. It's so incredibly different than the life you have today. That's because you have applied behavior change in your life. Next is a collaborative experience. When people work with us, it's not like we disappear for 3 months and come back with an entire solution for you. It's a dialogue. Everything is a dialogue. Dialogue with the client, dialogue with the CEO, dialogue with the VP of product, dialogue with the intern. Because if we don't include them in the dialogue, you come up with surprises, and surprises are not a fantastic thing when it comes to product development, right? You need to anticipate a lot of problems in advance in order to make sure that you deliver a product on time and on budget. And that's very related to the next point, which is lean product development. So you might have never heard of this before. So lean product development is the overlapping of disciplines in order to shorten timelines and mitigate risk. What that means really is that designers work with strategists, work with engineers, work with manufacturers at the same time. And that sounds like a crazy, crazy place to work, but that is the best way to get things done quickly and effectively. And when designers are exposed to the science or exposed to the limitations of engineering, they make better decisions, right? They make decisions together. And that's really something I want to stress in the careers of young designers. Be in the room, listen to what people have to say. It doesn't matter if you're not invited to that meeting, you have to be in there and really learn how people make decisions so you can control them in the future when you want them to choose your design. Next is about long-term relationships. As students, I know it's like, this is more of a business thing. It takes a lot of effort to find new clients, and I'm lazy. So I want my clients to come back. And the only way to do that is to build relationship. And it's kind of the same thing when you start working with people. Do you want people you only have a cold professional relationship with, or do you want them to come back to you and ask you to work with them again and again? So this is something that comes from you, and you have to work that way. Next is we have an obsessive attention to details. So one thing that's wonderful about design is that once you see the reality of it, the tangibility of it, there are certain aspects of it that you can control, right? You can control where the center of gravity is. You can control how comfortable it is on someone's body. You can control how it feels 1 year, 2 years, 5 years, 10 years after you've bought the products. And that's where good design comes in, right? A designer really pays attention to things like this and designs them within the solution from the beginning. So one thing you'll see that's very evident about the way I talk about design, we practice design, is that we have no interest in doing boring stuff. You know, if a company comes to me and say, hey, I have this technology, can you just put an enclosure on it? I don't care what it looks like. I'm like, I don't want to work with you. I have no interest in that. So if it's not revolutionary, it's a waste of my time. That's what it comes down to. So obviously in the beginning of your career, picking and choosing is going to be a little bit harder, but you know, it took me about 15 years to be able to say that out loud, because I had to learn the boring stuff first in order to know what I like, right? And some people like to do boring stuff. There's nothing wrong with it. I mean, they make plenty of money doing that. And then finally, design for a better future, right? The better future that we want for us, for the next future generation. That's all, you know, ingrained in every decisions that we make. And we are here as designers with a lot of power, you know, creating this and giving it a form and giving it an experience that people can connect to. So before we go into the design, let's talk about what good design is. You know, everybody has a different definition of what good design is. To me and to Nonfiction, my company, it is the perfect balance between appearance, value, and function, right? If you have too much appearance and not enough function, there's a disconnect there. If you have too much function and like zero appearance, like nobody's going to want to buy it. If it doesn't bring value to people, then why should they buy it, right? So we need these three aspects, and you know, I really want you to think about it as like a checkbox. Every time you design something, how is their appearance? Is the function figured out, and does it bring value to people? And that's in order to make things relatable, harmonious, and useful, right? These are the type of products that we like to surround ourselves with. And there are many types of aspects of design that we need to check, you know, when we do that. When we think about appearance, is not only the way it looks to us, you know, is it pretty, is it not pretty? That's important too. But you have to think about market fit. You have to think about trends. You have to think about branding, durability, and intuitive use. When you think about function, you have to think about reliability, durability, ergonomics, user experience, and pleasure. And it's not like one or the other is more important. It really depends on what brand you're working with. But you as a designer need to check all of these boxes to make sure that your design is well thought out throughout. And then finally, the value. What is the value to the user or the purchaser? Here I put them, you know, two different words because they might be different people. What is the value to the company that you're working for or the partners that you're working with? What is the value to the future of the industry? You know, whether it's healthcare, education, consumer electronics, whatever. What is the value to humanity, right? Now we live in a world where people, young people like you, start, you know, thinking about these things from the beginning. So hold on to these ideas very strongly. And then finally, the planet. You know, our planet is a stakeholder. You know, everything that we design ends up on the planet somewhere at some point. So how do we deal with that? So I believe, you know, very much that good design is designed for good. You know, it can have all the appearance that you want, but if in the end it doesn't do something positive in the world, that is a failure. So the United Nations put out the 17 Sustainable Development Goals. I hope you know all of these by heart by now. But all this is a guideline about what is important to us as humans on this planet at this moment, right? So there's a lot of problems with inequality. There's a lot of problems with education and access to it, specifically during this last year and a half. There's a lot of problem with health and well-being, or the way we treat ecosystems below the water. So all of these problems are things you have to keep in the back of your mind and inject in the appropriate places when you develop products. So the other thing about Design for Good is that we partner with organizations. Here is MIT Solve. So the Massachusetts Institute of Technology has a marketplace of startups. So we work a lot with startups, being in Silicon Valley, like everybody is a CEO of a startup here. But MIT, which is based in Boston, has a lot of like social impact focused startups that we actually help develop, right? Some of them have to do with reducing waste, in the way packaging is handled in India. Some of it has to do with health education in Afghanistan. Some having to do with language conservation in, remote places of Hawaii. So a lot of that kind of work is very much part of what we can do as industrial designers or as designers as a whole, because everything is connected. So here I wanted to show you a little bit of a history of nonfiction, and that will show you the flexibility that we have as designers in our career. And it's pretty amazing. So nonfiction is about 5.5 years old. And so we started in 2016 with industrial design, classic industrial design. You have a product, you have a technology, give it to us. We'll give it an appearance, a color, a shape, and an ergonomic solution. So that's what we did in 2016. In 2017, we added a lot of work in human factors. I'll give you an example later about a pair of headphones that I'm actually wearing right now that really focuses on comfort, fit, and all of the very difficult intricacies of ergonomics. In 2018, we focused on transformational technology. And that's a very interesting division of technology. So transformational technology is technology in service of health, of wellness, of performance, and of longevity. So everything that makes us age better or live better or think about the future better or even explore different parts of the universe by protecting our bodies is part of transformational technology. In 2019, we focused on education and social impact. So very much, working with different governments in developing educational systems that align with the future of work. Because I'm sure all of you have been to schools, more or less progressive, but like the classic information-based education system is just not aligning at all with the way people are going to work today or in the future. In 2020, we focused on mobility and space exploration. So I actually took a hiatus of about 12 years in space architecture because I was very dissatisfied with the state of it. It was just a bunch of like, space architects who are very focused on systems engineering, which is basically a Tetris game of fitting life support systems into a tiny little can where people barely survive, right? So I was not interested in that aspect of space. My goal in space and in mobility and everything that we design is to make it more human, right? And that's actually a very difficult thing to do. And then finally, in 2021, we're focusing a lot on sustainability and automation, which I think go very, very much hand in hand because a lot of the efficiencies that need to happen in terms of supply chain and accessibility to things in sustainability has to come from AI and has to come from robotics. So one thing that we feature behind us, so you can see some of it behind me, is a material library. So material libraries are pretty wonderful, first for inspiration, right? When you walk through halls of materials, you can touch, you can smell, you can pull on, you can, look at different aspects of it, durometer, how it reacts to light, all that stuff. It's so incredibly inspiring. Now, the difficult thing about a lot of materials is the bridge between what this material is and how to apply to a project, right? Because you have to pass all the hurdles of, well, is it available in the quantity that I need? Does it reach the cost that is low enough that I can mass manufacture this thing and sell the product at the cost that I want, right? Is it satisfying the sustainable goals that I've put upon myself in order to to satisfy the clients and the audience. So a lot of that work is part of what we do here. And this is actually a collaboration with a company called Material Connection, which is a New York-based consultancy. So they have actually material scientists and experts in connecting the vendors that create all of these materials with creatives like ourselves. All right, so now I'm going to talk about projects that we do on Nonfiction. And the way I divided it is, thinking about the future of certain aspects of life. And we're going to start with the future of humans. So this is, it looks like a pair of headphones. It's actually a brain stimulator. And what's kind of magical about it is that, when the client came to us, they were asking us, where's your motor cortex? Do you know where your motor cortex is? And I'm like, I have no idea what my motor cortex is. But I know how to put on a pair of headphones. And the motor cortex happens to be right underneath where a typical headphone band is. So you integrated both products together, a pair of headphones that create stability for the electrodes to touch the scalp, but also, you can provide music. So this product actually uses electricity to stimulate the motor cortex so you can learn movement faster. So learning movement faster is very useful for athletes or for anybody who works out. So I don't know if you ever, gone on a jog. So basically the first, 15 minutes, you're like, oh my God, I hate running. It's terrible. Why am I doing this? Like, it hurts. I want to stop, right? That's what's happening. And then after like 15, 20 minutes, you get into what's called the state of flow. State of flow from a neurological standpoint is basically when your brain doesn't exert itself and you don't think about putting your foot in front of the other. It's kind of like an autopilot. And that helps you get to better performance physically. And it sounds like kind of magic that you can do that by stimulating the top of your head, but that's a product that's able to do that. So back in the day, the product was very expensive, kind of like targeting people who could afford it, like athletes, going to Olympics. The team that you just saw earlier was the USA team for cycling, and they're using this product in their training. But now we can actually buy this kind of technology for $350, which is not cheap. But if you want to get better at the gym, that might be a good investment. Next is human headphones. So I'm actually wearing them right now. And have been for a couple of years they've been out. So this is the first on-ear headphone without a band. A lot of people actually come to me and tell me, well, I love your concept of human headphones. And I tell them it's not a concept. It's something you can buy, right? So the reason why it's so, a lot of people don't believe it looks like a real product is because it's so incredibly simple from the outside. Right? It looks like an extension of the body. It looks like river stones placed on each side of your head. There's no button on it. It's very inconspicuous. But there's a lot of technology and a lot of innovation that actually went into this product in order to make it happen, right? One is fit. Right? Figuring out the geometry that fits most human ears, knowing that human ears can be small, they can be big, they can be weird and asymmetrical and all that was very difficult. Another thing is that we wanted this product to feature no buttons because it's inspired directly from nature. Nature does not have any buttons, right? So why put buttons on our electronics? And so thinking about electronics as an extension of the human body and an extension of nature on the human body has pushed us to make certain decisions about how to design this thing. One, it needed to be very clean. Two, it needed to be very stable, so you wouldn't be distracted by it. And three, we wanted no buttons on it, and everything is connecting with magnets. It's kind of satisfying to use. So everything was like that. But what was very difficult about it is that making this thing look like it was very simple to develop. And oh boy, it was not simple to develop. Like fitting a bunch of components that you see on the left in a geometry when nothing is straight is very difficult, right? We need to make sure that the sound was high quality, that the plane against which the ear sits actually blocks the sound all around, so you get high quality sound, right? So this marriage of industrial design and ergonomics and acoustic engineering and mechanical engineering and electrical engineering all working together, what I was talking about earlier, is what made this product possible. Otherwise, it would look like any other pair of headphones. But we took the risk, and the risk, was rewarded because you can see this product now. To give you an idea of how difficult it was, it took us 700 rounds of prototypes to figure out the right geometry. We tried everything. We tried to change the battery size, the size of the battery, how twisted it is. We tried to change the components, move them all around. Same thing for the magnets. Making sure that the center of gravity was at the right place. So when I shake my head like this, the thing doesn't move. You can do a handstand with these headphones. That's how secure they are on your head. And the advantage of this for our clients is that they got a lot of patents out of this, right? Patents are a value. I talked earlier about value. One of the values that is important to the companies you work for is the patentability of the ideas you come up with. Sometimes it takes a lot of work, like this exercise in 3D printing, but it was necessary to get to a solution that actually makes sense. This product is really, really cool. So we get to work with firefighters. And one of the problems with firefighters is that it's very difficult for them to see through smoke, right? They enter a room, they enter a house that's like on fire, there's smoke everywhere. You can't see anything. You can't see the stairs. You can't see people. You can't see the ceiling falling onto yourself. It can be extremely dangerous, not only for the people in the house, but also for the firefighters. So we actually created this AR rig that fits into the mask of the firefighters, the mask in which they breathe clean air. And then there's a thermal camera on the outside that actually gives you the information. And that thermal camera, with the technology that's in the AR, tells you what is the edge of what room. And so you can move through the building a lot faster, save lives faster, and save yourself faster as well. If I remember right, the time you save in and out of the house is, 15 to 20 seconds less. And that can be the difference between life and death in certain situations. And again, here, a lot of 3D printing, making sure that everything was easy to place in the mask. When it came to the button, you have to realize that firefighters wear multiple layers of gloves, and they have to be sure that they know where the buttons are, that they have the satisfying click every time they need to engage with a button, and that they can rely on the product. So one thing that's very interesting working with firefighters is reliability. They're extremely resistant to technology. Of course, because their life is on the line, and if something goes wrong, people can die, right? So it is your job as a designer, as a technologist, as an engineer to develop all of these products to make sure that the firefighters trust it and integrates them into their routine so we can save more lives. Next, I'm going to go to the future of health. So it's very, very rewarding to work in healthcare. And I wouldn't have said that about 10 years ago when I thought healthcare was honestly very boring. It was a lot of devices, and everything was very cold and away from the body. And one thing that's great about healthcare today is that we're realizing the wisdom of old ways of seeing medicine, and also merging that with all the technology that comes from the tech industry. So we're in this very interesting time, and I think it's going to get even better with telehealth and robotics. So one thing that we designed for Philips is the Philips Smart Sleep wearable. So it's a wearable that you wear at nights. What it does is that it helps you get better quality deep sleep. So you have deep sleep, you have REM sleep, and there are different types of sleep. And when you have bad quality deep sleep, right, so you're not really going deep and being quote unquote unconscious when you sleep. Well, you wake up groggy, you wake up unrested, and then the rest of your day, you're just accumulating that stress. So what this device does is that it stimulates your brain at different specific parts, and with electricity. And it helps you get high quality deep sleep. So the next morning you're all refreshed. So yeah, it's pretty interesting. What was very difficult about this is designing something that was, effective, which means that the electrodes had to be placed at the right position, but also comfortable. Because you have to imagine that the people who need that kind of technology probably toss and turn all night long, right? They have terrible quality sleep. So how do you design a wearable that's on the head, one thing that people are not used to, but also stays in place as you get quality deep sleep? The next product is Caletrio. So this one is kind of a crazy revolution. So Parkinson's disease is the disease where your body shakes a lot. So about 1 million people have Parkinson's disease in the US, and 7 million people have what's called essential tremor. So you tremor the same, but it's actually a different part of your brain that's affected. And people who suffer from essential tremors, can't control their hands. It's very hard for them to drink or eat in public, to write, and to use their cell phone or their laptop and get to work. The vast majority of people are older, but as you can see here, some people get afflicted younger in their lives. So what we did is that we designed a device that is approved by the Food and Drug Administration, which is the authority here in the United States that says that a medical product can go forward or not. And so you can see here the difference between using the product and not using the product, and that can change people's lives for the better. And one thing that's very important here is that we had to design for the patient, but we also had to think about their level of independence. If you have essential tremors and you're suffering from tremors, you don't want to have to depend on someone else to open the box for you. You don't have to depend on someone else to charge the device for you every night or to put it on your wrist. So every aspect of this design is actually created so a person with very severe tremors can do everything by themselves. And I think that brings dignity to people, with different conditions. And that's an aspect of healthcare that has been forgotten for too long, that designers can reintegrate into the way we think about the future of healthcare. One last thing about healthcare that's very, very exciting. So we are starting to work with psychedelics. So it's basically the administration of drugs that puts you in a very, very high state for about an hour. And so we're working with this doctor who's administering this, and she's doing this to treat people with severe depression, anxiety, and PTSD. And so what we're doing is that we are helping design the multi-sensory experience around the psychedelic, right? The psychedelic makes you see certain things, hallucinate, whatever. But then, having technology that keeps you warm or vibrates your body in a way that's actually healing, integrating visuals and sounds that work together to really get you deep into that state of healing is something that we're working on as well. Next, I'd like to talk about the future of education. So we got invited by the country of Singapore to design their educational system K through 12. So the goal of it all was to create a certain sense of human autonomy for the future adults of the country of Singapore. And because they were seeing there was a misalignment between the future of work and the way children were educated today, right? The children educated in Singapore, for the most part, very brilliant in many ways, but it's very much of an information-based, of a meritocracy-based educational system. And there's a little bit of a disregard of community, mental health, the environment, and all the things that make the future of work, right? So that's why we created this, a synthesis of what kind of environment would be suitable for children to learn in and to teach in and to do all of these activities as they are growing up, so they become well-balanced adults. So the first thing that we did is, not design a block as a school. So this is the first iteration that basically we wanted a school that looked like it was designed by a kid, right? And what do kids like to design? They like to design monsters. So we're like, why don't we have a school that looks like a monster? And that's where this whole conversation started. But what's happening with the textures and colors is that we wanted to go forward with like 3 themes that really, in essence, give you a flavor of what kind of school this is. We want, a sense of playful maturity. It's playful, but there's a lot of subtlety in the choice of colors and textures and durability that we put in. And as designers, we can control that. New nature. When nature is around is fantastic. When nature is not available, then we can integrate details in the design that give us clue about the beauty of nature. Because one thing about nature is that it's wonderful at leveling, levels of stress, lowering blood pressure, and making sure that you are comfortable in your own body as you are, integrating a lot of learning into your life. And then finally, scientific, right? Making sure that things are nerdy and are textured and have a meaning and come from a place of awe, right? There's something beautiful about science, and we wanted to make everybody in the school really understand that. We had to reflect with colors. There are certain colors that we create for exploring or energy, and some other colors where we rest around, right? Having that dichotomy of being active and being passive is very healthy in people's lives, right? In today's age, it's very difficult for people to turn off things, and then they're surprised the next day when they're exhausted. So we want to create an environment that supports both ends. So again, explore materials and rest materials. You can see a lot of color, you can see a lot of texture, you can see a lot of integration of nature that really is going to make this place so incredibly happy. So here are some illustrations of what we do in terms of systems design. Is what can we do with this environment? What kind of technologies can we integrate into all of this? What kind of textures and colors and what can you smell? What can you touch? What can you hear? Or things at the same time, all these things at the same time that can bring a lot of richness to your school experience. Collaborating with others, starting small businesses, building robots, collaborating in tiny little micro architecture and building things together is really what is at the core of, effective learning. As I said earlier, recharging, having that time off, that time for yourself, that time where you can do things that are not required of you, interacting with the environment. So it's, it brings joy to the time in between learning. One word that I love is absurdity. As designers and as engineers, we're very stuck in the idea that every single aspect has to make sense. What if something didn't make sense? What if it was completely crazy and pulled out of the imagination of children or adults that think differently? The thinking differently is very important here, because we have to finally accept that humans are different. We're neurodiverse. We think differently, we learn differently, we act differently, we connect differently. And an environment that allows that absurdity to express itself is very healthy. Agency. What agency means is, you want to do something and you're gonna do it, right? You don't have to ask for permission. You're in the school, you give in some furniture. Well, you don't like that color, or you don't like that material. You have the agency to replace it. The school allows you to do that. You have the agency of mixing drinks together and experiment with flavors and colors. You have the agency of creating your own furniture or your own lighting. So it can be pretty fun to play with that. You also have the agency of creating your own furniture here, where you can play with different shapes. Not everything has to make sense. Not everything has to be symmetrical and perfect and crazy. We have to bring a lot more playfulness into the way that we learn, into that environment, in order to really develop that part of the brain that says that everything is possible. And in order to do that, we can support that with the integration of really freaking cool materials like milk plastic or recycled plastic with dots everywhere, ink that comes from pollution, bacteria that can dye beautiful fabrics in gorgeous colors, algae textile, whatever you like. And then really giving that that endless pit of possibilities to those children. We're not here to design things for them. We're here to give them tools so that they can design things that really fit their will, right? And so we started creating, you know, an online tool that actually allows you to do all of this in a few clicks. You know, learning how to build things for yourself, creating again that sense of agency and autonomy, and bringing your personality as a child into this environment is so incredibly important. So instead of a curriculum, what we wanted to do is like think about different activities that can be done in groups of different ages of children, even adults, that that really rethink how we learn and what we retain and how we share that with other people. So repurposing the materials or old clothing or old instruments can be one thing that we do. We recontextualize. I talked earlier about neurodiversity and how certain people are very aligned with mathematics and some others are really aligned with theater, and some other people, you know, like to see things moving in order to understand it. We need to give the kids the tools to do that for themselves, but also have fun along the way. Exchange, right? Not every activity has to be based on like grades or anything like this. Sometimes you just want to you know, be in an environment that allows you to make that environment yours, and to have fun and to be silly and to have this like one-on-one connection with people that will mean something in the future. So next I'm going to talk about the future of tech. So this is a very interesting project. So there's a company called Kaya based in Tanzania. They came to us about a year ago and said, hey, you guys are based in Silicon Valley. We would love you to build a Google Home for us. Well, Google Home is the smart speaker. You talk to it, you know, it orders things and tells you certain things about the internet, whatever, right? Some of you might have that. And I'm like, well, I don't want to design that. That's futile. Just go to a store and buy a Google Home. What I didn't like about this is that they wanted to take Silicon Valley technology and import it to East Africa. And that doesn't make any sense to me. The East African needs, everyday needs of how they use the internet or how they buy their products or how they listen to music is so incredibly different from the way we do it here. So why should we use the same technology? So we convinced them to create like a series of you know, smart speakers with a lot of technology that's completely adequate for East African lifestyles. And you know, I'm not going to go into detail. I can't really talk about it, but like it's something that looks like this. You know, it really integrates well into the interiors of, you know, African homes, and the textures. You know, there's a lot of like dust in the air, and really like giving it that texture, that heathering is part of what we do. But like there's a whole story behind here around connectivity and how African people connect to the internet. But that's something that you will have to wait to see. So here, you know, one of the things that make my work very special is my relationship to space and how I think about the future of space, right? I could design the same type of like spacecraft like the ISS. I don't know if you've ever seen the inside of the ISS. It's definitely not the place you want to hang out in for a long time. And I thought there was a lot of work that needs to be done there. So here's some examples of it. So I got asked by the ISS National Laboratory and the World Design Organization to design the future of an orbital university. That's actually how I met Cholera. She was one of the facilitators there. And so I was part of a team of 14 people from like 11 time zones, and we worked together for 2 weeks to build something like this. And what it does is that it focuses on creating a university that is divided in 24 inflatable pods that, you know, orbit around the Earth, and give the opportunities to universities to have microgravity environments to do a lot of their testing. So here we're focusing on biology and the growing of food in microgravity. As you know, we can use some aeroponics or hydroponics in space. There's certain things we can grow up there, you know, certain types of, you know, radishes and things like that. But the diet of people in space needs to be a lot more expanded like this, which is why we need a lot more work to be done in that field. So this is what the spacecraft looks like from the front. Another thing we worked on is what we call color on the moon. So if you look at the moon, all over the moon, everything is gray, right? It's like dark gray or light gray, depending on where the light is, but it's like an extremely gray place. The only thing that gives you color when you're on the moon is when you look back at Earth, right? And so what we wanted to do, because we're coming back to the moon, because we're thinking about mining it, because we're thinking about creating settlements there in the future, is really creating environments there that say, this is a human environment. And what says human environment more than color, right? And especially when you're going to put your entire habitat underground. So the reason why we put it underground is for multiple reasons. So as you know, the surface of the moon is not a place where you can breathe, and underground either. But the surface of the moon also have a lot of micrometeorites hitting, which is why you see a lot of craters on the surface. There's also an insane amount of radiation happening at the surface, which you can protect yourself from partially, but it's going to be very hard for you to protect yourself entirely. So, there's a natural occurrence happening on the moon and on Mars called lava tubes. So these are gigantic tubes that have like a natural entrance to them, and we can build architecture underground in those structures. There's a 40-meter basalt layer that covers the top of the spacecraft, and that is actually very effective in blocking most of the radiation coming from the surface.
Sorry, Sam, you got muted. You're still muted.
Here we go. That should work now.
Yeah, that's right.
Okay, fantastic. So anyway, you can see like integration of color, integration of textures and nature, what we call new nature, which is fake nature that really gives you the impression of all of this, is very much what we're doing here. And also on the body, what kind of technology do we need to integrate to make sure that people are comfortable, knowing that when they look out the window, they basically see death. So how do we make the interior really feel like home? What is going on here? All right, so the future of mobility. So this is a project that we did recently, designing mobility for the city of Nashville, Tennessee. And so really thinking here about how we reintegrate natural textures and cultures. Nashville is well known for music, so and food. So, making all the design decisions to integrate all of this plus the natural environment around is going to make the city a lot more pleasant to be around. So there's this thinking that, when you integrate more technology, there's less nature. And I think we're at a point in the way we think about design where we can do both at the same time. So really thinking here about the architecture and how we preserve, old historical buildings while integrating more technology and more architecture that takes a lot more risks. Again, integration of nature on the indoors or textures that are reminiscent of the nature around is very much part of creating that public transit system that actually feels good to be around. We design trains and different types of vehicles. The integration of the local culture. If you have, people living in Nashville or native in Nashville telling you stories about how wonderful it is to live there, as you're going through the city, as you're going to work or commuting, or as you're visiting as a tourist, I think can give a lot of life to the way we build a relationship with our transit system. You're thinking about the first mile and last mile. Every time you go somewhere, do you have to walk? Do you have to use human-powered tools, or can you use electrical autonomous vehicles, right? So we, here, in the US, we're developing a lot of technology having to do with this, and that's something that we can start having on the street. Driverless, Ubers, for example, that take you to the stadium, to the next destination. Another project that we did is redefining the interior of aircraft. So when we're stuck indoors during COVID, we're like, I hate flying. I hate everything about flying. We used to go to Singapore every month. That was a 17-hour flight, and I hated every minute of it. So how do we rethink the interior of all of this? By integrating like warm textures, nature, and materials that really support us. But also integrating technology that's in support of all of this, right? Light that actually helps you with your circadian rhythm. So when you arrive at the different time zone, you're not all groggy and lost, right? Technology that's integrated in the seats to make you feel like you're in a spa. Integration of actual nature, so you can actually calm down and reduce your blood pressure and go on with your life. Integration of the bar, back in the day, in the 60s, flying was a little bit more exclusive. The business people would do that, and they would mingle at the bar and really connect from a business standpoint with it. We need to bring that back, and we can definitely do that. What if we transform every bathroom into a spa? Why does it need to be a lavatory where it's like nobody wants to hang out in, and it's really unpleasant and dirty? So what if it's self-cleaning? What if it has this beautiful wood texture? What if the climate control was very, very nice inside? And here thinking about the way we think about business class, what kind of environment allows you to work effectively, to cut off from work, to get some rest, to have the tools that you need to be effective as you're in the sky. And in the future, we'll be able to, be on Zoom calls, on phone calls, up in the air. I mean, technically we can do it today, but, having design think about solutions that allow us to do this tomorrow is going to be quite important. Because of COVID and all the technology that has to do with keeping a space clean, we integrated a way to clean not only the surface, but also all the nooks and crannies, bacteria, viruses, using UVC technology. So this kind of UVC is actually very dangerous for humans, which is why you have to use it when the airplane is completely empty. And also redefining how you organize an airplane. Is it just like a bunch of seats crammed to each other and then all facing the same direction? Is it fanning out? Is it creating those 2 extra inches on the side of your leg to create a little bit more comfort during the flight is what we're going for. Creating lounges so you can hang out and be away from your seat a little bit. Or perhaps places where you can sleep a little bit, for an hour or 2 and get some rest. So you don't arrive completely, angry at everybody. And then really thinking about the galley, what kind of robotics can we integrate into all of this to make the work of the people working for the airline a lot easier and service to be of the optimal quality. Next, I'm going to talk about the future of food. This is pretty small. So we get to design food. It's pretty awesome. So we get to design plant-based bacon, create molds for them, and this bacon you can find in San Francisco. It's pretty fun. It's cashew-based, so there's a tiny bit of sweetness to it, but you can see there's the layering of the red and the orange that gives it this appetizing effect. And reducing the way we consume meat is going to have a direct impact on the way we consume other resources like water and so on. We also do a lot of experiments with lasers, lasering chicken to make it look more appetizing. This is actually for an application for space we're working on. And that's actually the project we're working on, the Deep Space Food Challenge. So it's a collaboration between NASA and the Canadian Space Agency working together to figure out how we can feed astronauts that go to Mars. So in a matter of 1 or 2 decades, we're going to go to Mars as humans, and that's a year. It's a 6 to 9 months trip to Mars, and then you have to stay there for a year and a half, and then it's 6 to 9 months back. So it's a long time, and you cannot possibly eat a freeze-dried food that was packed 3 years ago for the entire time of your trip. So what you need to do is create new types of foods or new types of bringing nourishment to your body or nutrition to your body that is actually varied, that gives you some textures and give you some colors and some integration of culture. So part of the work that we do is also food design and figuring out how that works for extreme environments. And I think this is the last section, future of sustainability. You cannot do design today and not at least mention the word sustainability in some ways. But sustainability goes way beyond just, oh, I chose this material because it's a bioplastic, blah, blah, blah. That's, for the most part, that's actually wrong. But really thinking about the systems behind sustainability is very much part of the work that we do. So I'm actually a board advisor to this company called Positive Fibers. And what they're trying to do is to create completely non-toxic compostable fashion. So you wear it and you can donate it or whatever, but when it's time to throw it away and it ends up in the ocean, because we as humans have never figured out a better way to deal with it, it's not affecting ecosystem. You know, the dye doesn't change or poison you know, a frog or a fish or a turtle in the ocean, because it's done in like very, very clean ways. So here it's not only the design of the product, which, you know, comes from like emerging designers, but also is figuring out where the material comes from, how much it travels, and how the end of life is going to affect ecosystems. I started a brand about, or is it like 8-9 years ago, where I really thought about sustainability as creating product that lasts forever. So I learned to, you know, do all of those bags and wallets by hand, right? And integrating contemporary designs with you know, the idea that something should be used or repaired or passed on to the next generation again and again, right? We live in such a disposable society these days. You know, we buy something and then 5 years later we have a new version of that thing. Do we actually need that? The answer is no. So let's start building relationship with the products that we buy by buying higher quality and things that are created in a way where they can be repaired. So another thing here is sustainability through materials. And part of sustainability is also non-toxicity, right? There's a lot of endocrine problems that happens with people who grew up surrounded by toxins, whether the toxins come from, you know, what's in your kitchen, or you know, circuit boards like leaching into the water that you're drinking. I mean, it can be pretty extreme depending on where you live in the world. So really creating clean products for the kitchen. You know, on the right side, you have baby bowls, you know, that also have the advantage of staying on the table so the food doesn't go everywhere. On the top left, you have actually molds from breast milk. So you don't have to use all those like plastic bags and then throw them away. You can actually just like pour the breast milk in there and then keep it for as long as you need. And then, you know, redefining like Tupperwares and things like this by using glass and using silicone in ways where, you know, they can be disassembled and then recycled later. One project that we did many years ago, that was before I started Nonfiction, is creating the brand The House of Marley. So we work with the sons and daughters of Bob Marley with this, and figuring out how to translate Bob Marley's songs and philosophy into products. And we did that by creating, you know, boom boxes and speakers and headphones and things like that, that really translate that music beautifully. Not only did we design the product, we also designed the sound to fit all of this. And the way we did it is that by rethinking where the materials come from and how can they be upcycled or recycled. So really redefining all of these materials and figure out who's going to provide these materials and what kind of standards we have to hold them onto. It was very much part of the work that we did. And we did the same thing with packaging, right? You could have like super fancy packaging that you're going to stare at for 2 seconds and then throw away. Or you can have, you know, this kind of packaging, which is very, very basic cardstock, you know, very few adhesives being used. Everything is like folded, no use of foam. So a lot of the decisions put together to make sure that we are harming the planet as least as possible. And so this is my last slide. This is Future. Some of you might have seen this. So my husband and business partner, Martis, and I started a video series about a year ago called Future. And what we do is that we talk about design, how we practice it, and we also talk about the future of everything. So thank you for having me today. And now I will open for questions.
Thank you very much, ma'am. As I told you before, every time I hear your talk, is just speechless. You left me speechless. This was amazing.
Thank you.
So, guys, chicos, si tienen alguna duda, pueden escribirla ya sea en el chat o pueden abrir su micrófono, pero levanten la mano primero, por favor. Bueno, me llegaron algunas preguntas por mensaje, entonces, well, inglés. So, I got some questions that I was sent to by message. So, for everybody to, well, when they start to go to their questions, I have another question. So one of our participants in the call is asking, how does Trio compensate the movement of the user? Is it mechanical or electrosimulation? This is due to, like, the question is focused on your experience designing this device. Is it more difficult to work with a physical movement compensation as a method of stabilization, or is it the electrostimulation a better way to control the movement, which is less invasive in terms of perception of the users?
Yeah, I would say that electricity is less invasive as long as the closed loop system is accurate. So you have this device who has electrodes that reads your body. And what it does is that it puts electricity at 3 specific points on your wrist. And what it does is that it disrupts the feedback loop that's going on with your brain. So you have your brain, and then you have your nerve that comes from the brain to your wrist. And your wrist is basically what controls how much your hand tremors, right? So your brain is saying, you have to move, you have to move, you have to move. And that's why you do this, right? And so when you disrupt that with electricity, then the brain still says, you're moving, but your hand doesn't move, right? And so that's what's happening with this product.
Okay, that's actually really interesting. Thank you very much. So, well, I have a bunch of questions written down. So if anyone wants to ask anything, please go ahead. Or I will continue with my questions. So, okay, we have a question on the chat. Hello, thank you for this amazing presentation. And Isa is asking, well, she would like to know if you have worked with a generative design, or what do you think about it?
Not yet. So generative design is useful for very specific applications having to do with, stress. If you're stressing, your stress areas on a bridge, or a stress area when you're building a bone, a 3D printed bone, for example. I think that's very useful. For the type of projects that we're doing now, it's not yet effective. Another thing about generative design is that it forces us to use manufacturing processes that go beyond the classic ways of fabricating things. So what I mean by classic is like injection molding, compression molding, stamping, things like that. When you get into the realm of 3D printing, there's a lot of things you have to take into account. What is the, how much time is it going to take? What kind of infrastructure you have to put in place? Is it worth the investment? All of this business kind of like questions that you have to answer to make it happen. I believe that generative design is going to be wonderful for the future once 3D printing has more prominence. But as of now, if you want to make cheaper products that work every time, we're not there yet.
Yeah, you're right. I think we have a long way to go, but it looks promising, as you said.
Yeah.
So, is there another question, guys, or should I continue to the ones I have written down? Oh, okay. Ricardo.
Hi, thank you. Thank you for your presentation. It's really, well, it's just amazing knowing that this kind of conceptual and, almost sci-fi stuff is being made. That's incredible. And I have a question about the sustainability with the devices that we use today. For example, with the smartphones, with the tablets. I don't know if you have already explained that in other point, but what can we do with this cycle of obsolescence, with programmed obsolescence in the area of devices? Because we have, I think it's a little a double-sided blade. We have in one side we have that, okay, we have this new chipset that does things 3 times faster with they have the energy. But for another side, excuse me, we have that it's a planet of obsolescence. We have this cycle of I don't know if it says moth, with the aesthetics of the product, for example, of the, I don't know, the iPhone, the square edge design for the iPhone, that it's returning from 2012. So what can we do with that? Because we have batteries, we have silicon, we have the elements that, I don't know how to say that in English. Oh, that
in Spanish.
Je peux parler en français, mais n'est pas très correct. We have these elements that compose the screen. For example, we have the lamination, we have a lot of stuff, but what can we do in the future? If we're trying to not dispose electronics, how can we diversify innovation? How can we really innovate in the electronics if the main target is to not dispose them anymore or to not change them? Is there a kind of system of, you know, trading in the old device for the new device or something like that?
Yeah, there's definitely that. All the biggest companies in the world, Apple and Samsung, are doing that, where you can send back the products to have it recycled in the proper way. The thing is that the way products are put together today is done in a very complex way, right? It's not like old cars where you just can repair them yourself. You know, new cars have so much electronic and you have to go to the garage, right? So electronics is the same. And disassembling products for recycling is extremely difficult, because something might look like something like plastic or metal, but you're actually not sure. And it really depends on what kind of coating is on it. Now, the thing about planned obsolescence is that it's 100% a business decision, right? There's no reason why we build such strong laptops that are designed to last 3 to 4 years. Like, there's no reason for that. I can use this laptop. I have a MacBook Pro. I can keep this thing for the next 50 years. You know, it's made out of like machined aluminum. Like, this thing's not going anywhere. But what is forcing me to replace it every 3 or 4 years is the software. You know, the software, the security, or the hardware. You know, I have expectations about the resolution of a camera when I talk to someone on Zoom that's appropriate today, but would not be appropriate in 5 years, right? The fact that we're forced to do all of this is, I agree, completely crazy. So that opens the door to product development and industrial design. And, you know, the modularity of parts is something we can look into. The thing about modularity is that having 2 parts coming together is actually very complex to develop, takes more time, more money, and also it takes more space. And everything wants to be, you know, as slim and as efficient as possible. So that's number 1. Number 2 is really thinking about, you know, the supply chain and where things come from. And do we need to engage with like 12 different factories that like travel from all over the place to one factory to assemble everything, right? There are certain efficiencies about the way we put things together that needs to be figured out so we can actually move the needle in terms of sustainability. Also, material science, you know, because we are demanding a lot more from like small devices. You know, the glass is not just glass. The plastic is not just plastic. The metal is not just metal. Right? So recycling actually makes it a lot more difficult. And that's the main reason why it's like essentially impossible to recycle circuit boards, because there's like a bunch of components attached to it that you can desolder if you want to, but then there are traces of gold and there are traces of titanium and there are traces of this and that. So it's really hard to do that because we've been trying to do it manually. Now with AI, with robotics, with precision, with nanotechnology, we will be able in the future, in some future, to think about how that recycling happens in an effective way. So one thing that a lot of people don't realize that, for example, is that plastic can be recycled forever. Yeah, a lot of people think it's not recyclable because you have to put it in the right bin and it's recycled with the same material. But you can, a thermoplastic by definition is something that can be melted down and re-solidified, right? So you can actually mix different types of plastics together and re-solidify them. The problem with that is that you lose control of the properties. You know, when I know that I'm using ABS for, you know, a 1.5 millimeter enclosure for this piece of electronic, I know what kind of force it can survive, what kind of drop it can survive. I know how to create the structure so I don't see, you know, witness lines on the outside or whatever. It's very hard to do that when you don't have control about the composition of the material you're using, right? So all of these clues are things that we have to think about as product developers and designers and engineers to make sure that we make the best decisions for tomorrow. So everything I just talked about is actually part of another video series that we're doing, not under Nonfiction, we're doing it for our clients. So our clients is Ronin PD Labs, and they do engineering. And what they want to do is completely redefine how we do product development so it's more sustainable. And so we're helping them tell the story through videos and through websites and all that stuff. So you know, we'll let you know if you follow me on LinkedIn or whatever. You will see, we will post that when it's ready. We're still shooting the videos right now. But you know, a lot of people think that governments or business people need to make these decisions. We've waited long enough. Like, these people are not going to move. They're just making this money decisions, right? The people who are going to change this are designers and engineers. So we need to start now.
That's great, Phnam. Thank you very much. So I will go to Andres and Ricardo a little bit. I've got another question that was sent. This is from Brenda. She wants to ask about the psychedelic drugs project. That what did you want to achieve with that project?
Yeah, so it's been shown that infusing certain psychedelics, you know, at a doctor's office can help with the symptoms of depression, anxiety, and PTSD. But when you overlap that trip with multisensory experiences like specific sound and specific mood and specific light and specific vibration and whatever, we can actually enhance all of this. And to give you an example of how effective that is, one of the doctor we're working with, one of her patients came in suicidal. She was like, I want to kill myself. I don't like life anymore, right? After 2 sessions, 2 one-hour sessions, it sounded like she was back to normal. And she's tried everything. She's tried medication, she's tried therapy, she's tried, you know, all the gamut that medicine has given her. But now a simple chemical administered at the doctor's office with all those multisensory experiences is actually changing her life for the better. So what we do at Nonfiction is that we help with the multisensory experience. There's one aspect of it I can talk about because that's the proprietary part, but it makes the whole experience amazing. Is the part we're working on.
That's great, Phnam. Thank you. So Andres, go ahead.
Yes, thanks, Gary. First of all, thanks for your time, Phnam. I do have a question, and my question is going to be less theoretical and way more practical. I'm pretty intrigued about how many projects on your company's portfolio are actually concepts, meaning they are not industrialized or produced, such as the post-COVID airplane or the moon construction. And most important, how do you monetize these kind of projects?
So every product that you see, actual product, is on the market. Even though some people don't believe it, you can actually buy it. Everything that is related to systems design is either being developed and will be constructed soon, or is work that we do to get new clients. So for example, we wanted to get into the business of smart cities, And we didn't have anything in our portfolio that was related to that. So we actually spent some time and money dedicating to telling a very specific story. So a lot of people look at Nonfiction's portfolio and think that most of what we do is conceptual. We're actually one of the most technical design firms out there. I have solved problems that many top tier design studio were not able to figure out. One of the examples is human headphones. Four designers worked on that before I did, and it all failed. The reason for that is because even though we take a lot of risks in the shapes and the materials and the way things are used, we actually follow through. The people I work closest to are mechanical engineers, right? I whiteboard with them all day long, figuring out how this part comes into this part and what kind of, bill of material costs all of this is going to be, like how much insurance is going to be reimbursing this product for this user in this region, right? So I solve all these problems that, to be completely honest, most designers don't even care about, because I care about people experiencing what I design. If what I design is only conceptual and doesn't go anywhere or doesn't attract new work, that's a waste of my time, right? I got into the field of industrial design because I wanted to do stuff. That's why I called my company Nonfiction, right? So how I monetize all of this, so contract-based work is, for industrial design. A company comes to us, they might have a technology. We go through engineering and design and everything. They pay us, a certain amount of money to make that happen. One of the guarantees that we put out there that I'm very proud of is that we always honor the schedule. We're very strict on schedule. If we say we can do this in a year and a half, it will be out. And that's due to the fact that we're all very experienced in developing products. So yeah, even though a lot of things on our portfolio sound crazy, they're actually going to be built.
That's amazing. No, like really, really amazing. But also, I do have another question because of your answer. What do you think that your company is doing better than the other companies that doesn't achieve to succeed in this kind of projects, like such as the headphones, for example?
So number one reason is our openness with other disciplines. So a lot of designers tend to talk to designers about design in design rooms. And I have no interest in that. Actually, most of my friends are not designers. Most designers actually bore the crap out of me. What I'm interested in is talking to people who know things and tell me things that I don't know, or tell me things that blow my mind in ways that I can't even fathom. When I talk to physicists, when I talk to doctors, when I talk to even children, when I talk to people who see the world differently than me and experience products differently than me, that's where I learn. That's where I shut down all of my assumptions about how people behave, and that's when I innovate, right? So so that's one thing that's makes us stand out. Two is the fact that we have an extremely diverse team, and because of that, we have a lot of different opinions and experiences, professional and personal, that we inject into the work that we do. I've worked in all the design studios of the world, except for two. It was just a bunch of dudes, white dudes. So, and they all think the same, and they're all like, "Oh, I love your sneakers," and la la la. I'm like, right? They all talk the same. It's hilarious. But when you have people, we have a computational designer from Siberia. We have a film producer who is she's a specialist in woolly mammoths and ancient sharks. I mean, she went to Siberia and unearthed them. We have, people from all over the world. We have people who really bring a lot of richness to the work that we do. That helps us open to many different cultures in the world, right? Most of the companies we're working for are in Silicon Valley because money is good here, but we're able to work with people in Western Africa, in Eastern Africa, in South Asia, in New Zealand, wherever, because because that's what makes our work interesting. And then lastly, you know, there are many other reasons why we differentiate ourselves, but like, we've never had an intern and we've never had a junior designer. Not because they're not talented, a lot of them are, but it's because we cannot afford as a business to do work that doesn't follow through, to do work that is not fully developed. And also, I've seen too many times young people being worked to death because they were cheap, right? A lot of interns, a lot of junior designers are underpaid, working in those like fancy studios, you know, working all day, all night for like 3 days in a row. I've seen 2 people that almost had a heart attack before age 25. If you tell me that's okay, I don't know what to say, but it's not okay. You know, the industrial design is an extremely difficult field. You know, every engineer that I know actually thinks industrial design is a lot more difficult than engineering. Because engineering, you have a problem, you have a solution, you have this type of technology you have to go through. You do a lot of tests and you get there, right? In industrial design, everything is up in the air. The trends are up in the air. The technology is up in the air. The ergonomics, you know, based on the technology we have access to, is up in the air. The way people react to things, the appropriateness of the launch of a product with how ready the market is something that's kind of a soft science. So we have to play with all of these soft things and put it into something that's very concrete. And by the way, you can't make mistake along the way because that's going to cost you $500,000, right? We have to do all of this as one job. And the problem that industrial designers or any type of designers have in this world is that a lot of our work is not valued until we make millions of dollars, right? You know, every time they say, what do they say? If something doesn't work, it's because of the designer. If something works great, it's because of the marketer. So something like that. It's pretty crazy. So part of the work that I do, besides running nonfiction, besides, you know, designing all of these things, I'm also a huge advocate of the value of design. I go on Clubhouse, I go like public speaking all over the world. I'm like, design is a lot more than making something pretty. Anybody can make something pretty. You know, pretty is also like very subjective, really. But not everybody can make something pretty, give value, and work every single time. And that's when we come in.
That's a great answer, Phnam. Andres, are you going to say something?
No, yeah, thank you very much. I don't have any answer more or left. I just want to thank you for your answers, and also because I think most part of the people that are actually here are students, and I remember these years of students, and I think that in this kind of periods, we do need to have like this kind of success stories to have this hope remaining in our brains and our minds, because industrial design, as you said, is kind of difficult, and here in Mexico is also not really well paid, as you mentioned. So having these kind of conversations with people like you really are super worth it for us. Thank you very much.
Now, one thing I tell everybody is that when someone asks you to do something for free or for cheap, always remember that they can't do your job. So you have leverage.
That's right.
That's great. I'm gonna frame that phrase. So we are running out of time. Thank you for staying longer, Phnam.
Yeah,
we have just two questions. One is from Sophia. She said, "Hi, I was wondering if you have ever taken inspiration for a project directly from science fiction culture, kind of something like that's based off movies or series."
I wouldn't say movies or series, but yeah, sci-fi once in a while. But it's really more the human aspect of things that I'm interested in, right? There's this series called Red Mars, Blue Mars, Green Mars from Keane Stanley Robinson, where they describe, you know, life on Mars and the politics around what's going on there, and it's incredibly insightful to help, you know, think about how we're going to live on Mars. There are certain things that I would like to work on. So, as you know, Jeff Bezos and Elon Musk and this pissing contest about who's going to do what first in space. And so Jeff Bezos, actually his goal is to create an orbital or free space based like mega structure in space. And it would be like artificial gravity and things of the sort. And that's actually a concept that was put together by, what's his name? Oh my God, I forgot his name. He wrote the High Frontier, the author of the High Frontier. So he basically is a physicist who came up with the idea of doing this. And in the book, he actually breaks down how you're going to do it. And that was written in like the 60s. And really taking all of these ideas that sound completely crazy and then linking them to the present. The present gives us a lot of choice of technology, of ways of fabricating things, and all of that that can give us the direction of where to go. Because if we go every direction in the future, not giving ourselves a goal, which is going to Mars or having a mega structure in free space, it's going to take us forever. But now you have competitions, you have startups, you have the governments, you have the private sector that's like getting a lot of money. And all of these people, like literally like converging towards that goal, it's going to go a lot faster. And technology always goes a lot faster than you think. I mean, think about how people lived 50 years ago. Like it's basically a different planet.
Yeah, and actually, if we think about 5 years ago, it's just crazy how everything is moving. Yeah. Thank you very much for that. And Ricardo actually just wrote the name of the author, Tyson Sphere.
No, it's Gerard O'Neill. Gerard O'Neill is his name. Yeah.
Thank you.
O'Neill Rings, obviously.
Okay.
I was like, what's his name?
And we have our last question from Sarah. She said, "Hi, thank you for your awesome presentation. My mind is still blowing. I was wondering if you have ever considered applying biomimicry in any of your products, in your projects. What I mean is not just focusing on the external characteristic of nature, but in the way that they actually work. This is due to the way that you speak about nature as a source of inspiration. What do you think about that field?"
Yes, and it's really fantastic. We have worked in biomimicry when it comes to materials or surface treatments. I would like to integrate biomimicry with soft robotics. That's actually something that I'm working to start sometime soon, but that's a field that's very, very interesting to me because having a reactive environment that creates closed loop systems. So a closed loop system is basically data that is collected from your body that is transferred to a machine that transforms that data into an environment or a system or something that's happening in the environment and comes back to you. So that kind of thing can be pretty revolutionary for the future of well-being. Also for the future of architecture when you think about modularity and how a lot of like the way things attach to things can be inspired directly from nature, or the way they're soft or almost liquids versus solids. I think there's a lot of things going on there that can be pretty incredible. Yeah, biomimetics and all that is definitely a field I want to get close to. At this point, the way we're doing it is that we're getting close to universities to develop things together because it's so incredibly experimental at this point. And our part of our job is to give an application to what's going on in universities, right? And sometimes it's pretty crazy. I mean, it's not a university, but it could sound like one. We're talking to this guy who wants to create an array of like 18 microsatellites around planet Earth in order to harvest solar energy above the Earth's atmosphere, which is like unfiltered, basically, beam it down to planet Earth using microwaves and then distributing it using like hydrogen-based storage systems. I mean, that sounds like crazy, but what's amazing about technology like this is that you can actually give access to cheap electricity to anybody for anybody in the world, basically, if you have stuff like that. And I don't think we're far off. You know, we honestly could do this in 15 years if we have the money.
Yeah, I completely agree with you. And well, I was going to end with that last question, but Ariana just submitted another one that I really love for, in a way, to finish this talk. She said, hi, and thank you for your time. What would be your recommendation or advices for the people who want to follow this path, this way?
It is extremely important for all of you to be extremely curious. So I have never been interested in cookie cutter designers who just make like fantasy renderings and then tell me it's real. Like no. Really get close to all the disciplines, get curious, ask questions, be in the room, work effectively. I'm not interested in people who work themselves to death. You know, if you tell me that you work 80 hours a week, I have no respect for you. That means that you're inefficient and I can't use you. But if you work less, I mean, to a certain point, and know how to make the right decisions quickly, or know who to ask if something is stopping you, that's the best skill, right? And on top of that, make sure that you have all of your hard skills up to date, right? When I have like designers who want to get paid a lot of money telling me they never want to touch 3D, I'm like, get out. Like, I can't use you. Like, from a business standpoint, like, you are useless to me. So always think about, if you want to work in a studio like mine, or work in a company that is very forward future thinking, you have to think about what kind of skills they need and what can you bring to the company that nobody else can bring, right? Like, the number one rule in every job that you will ever have, regardless of whether it's a small company, a big company, whatever, is the first 3 months, how do you make yourself indispensable? Like, if you left tomorrow, like, everything crumbles. It's kind of satisfying, actually, when it happens. But it's really finding what's so unique about you. Why were you hired? Why were you put on this project? Is it because someone has a preconceived ideas of who you are and how you can work? Or are they using you as a tool? Or are you actually bringing something that nobody else can bring, right? And that's how I have built my career. I'm going to tell you something that's probably going to shock all of you, is that I'm a terrible interviewee. Most interviews I've ever had, I failed them because I think like this. Because when someone talks to me narrowly about the industrial design, I want to talk about culture. I want to talk about travel. I want to talk about texture. I want to talk about philosophy. I want to talk about history. I want to talk about all these things because that's what makes industrial design amazing. And we have put industrial design in such narrow boxes with education, with the work that we do, with the way we pay ourselves, that they are uncomfortable when they're in the presence of someone like me who's like literally interested in everything. So that is not something that, you know, I can't tell you do the same thing as me because it was really freaking hard. But I think better workers in the future are workers you want to hang out with, you want to have conversations with, you want to develop relationships with, right? So yeah, that's my recommendation.
Thank you very much, Phnam. I think I can speak for everyone that we all loved this talk. It was very interesting and we needed this. It's something that has been in the back of our minds, and it's kind of the worry of the younger generations. And we really thank you for having the time and longer time than we expected. So I hope we can have you in the future to talk with you in another like kind of a talk or interview, but we would love to have you again in these conversations. So thank you very much.
Yeah, well, thanks for inviting me. It was wonderful to get to meet some of you. You know, I don't really see faces here, but thank you for sending your questions. It's important to ask questions. Always be curious. And yes, you know, some people say there are no dumb questions. Actually, there are. But these were very, very great questions because they're here to build who you are going to be. So always ask these questions. Always get opinions, but never forget who you are and hold on to that. That's the hardest part.
Thank you very much. Y muchas gracias a todos por haber venido. Espero que les haya gustado nuestra invitada el día de hoy. La verdad, nosotros estamos muy felices de que nos haya podido acompañar. Y no sé si se quieran, antes de irse, despedirse, poner su cara, porque Phnam no vio ninguna de sus caras, para, pues no sé, agradecerle el haber venido y el haber estado aquí. So, thank you.
It's nice to see your faces. Okay.
I'm going to take a picture of all of you.
Okay.
Seguramente me lo entendieron. So, great. Thank you very much. Creo que no están todas las caras, pero ya las voy a tomar. 1, 2, 3. Muchísimas gracias a todos. Thank you very much, Phnam, for having this time, and we wish you the best. Deseamos también ustedes lo mejor, y ya nos estaremos poniendo en contacto para la siguiente vez que Phnam venga y para nuestro siguiente evento. Muchísimas gracias por asistir y que tengan una linda tarde y un lindo día y un lindo fin de semana. Gracias.
Gracias.
Thank you, Phnam.
Gracias.
Bye.
Thank you very much.